everybody, I am back with a new video. Been a busy week. As you know, I did the 4-hour live stream this past weekend. Please check it on the link below. It was a lot of Vue.js with no TypeScript for folks who were always asking for some more of that. So please check it out. I hope you enjoy it. I've also spent a bunch of time this week working on my book, which is the Ionic Vue book. Also, link below. Please check it out. Still looking for guidance on pricing and stuff. As I said, I'm shooting to kind of drop part of that by the end of the month. And then the other thing was I started working on my Intro to Vue.js course that I have been kind of working on amongst all these other things. I started pushing it towards Udemy, found some challenges with the pricing and also how Udemy works. I want to be able to do some drip marketing with the class, i.e. drop a couple of chapters and drop a few more chapters instead of trying to drop it all at once. And so I moved everything back to Teachable again. So that's what I've been doing all week, and I got this one last video here for you, which is a little bit of a deeper dive in Vuex. I posted a video last week of a walkthrough of a split view starter template with Vuex in it. I didn't really implement a persistent backend. I just kind of saved some stuff to local storage. It was kind of just something quick to put out there. This time I'm doing a deeper dive. I'm actually integrating Firebase. So I'll show you how to use Vuex to log in and log out of Firebase. And I also have written it using the new setup approach with pure TypeScript, with all TypeScript. But I also included a source file in the project that's just written in regular JavaScript using the older Options API approach, where you have kind of the data, the properties, and the methods. So hopefully this is something for everyone. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And let's get to it. As I said, we're going to go through a little bit of Vuex here in this video. So here's the app we're working on. As you can see, it's just got a basic login screen. And when I log in, I get the information on the user. I get the state of the login, so that's what's switching between the login screen and just the information on the user, and then I can log out, and it determines that I'm in the logout state. So it shows me the login page. The other thing that I do as I log in, I now on refresh the application. You could see the initializing that appeared. It's using Firebase to check if I have a current user that exists. If I have the user, load the user into state and bring us back here to this page, showing the information on the user that's logged in. So let me log out and let's kind of hop straight to the code. So I am going to start, as I said in the kind of setup for the video, I wrote this using no TypeScript here, and so this code will be included in the repository, but the emphasis of this is going to be talking about how, sorry, got the wrong link. This here is being done with no TypeScript. You can see it's using kind of the old Vue 2 approach with the data, and it's got its computed, and it's got its methods. So this is included in the source code that I'll make available, but the primary focus is going to be here on this approach, which is the newer approach using the setup with references and the use store and the computed and all of those things. So just to let you know, that's what I got going. So even if you just watch the video and get a little bit lost, don't worry, there's a source code for the non-TypeScript folks. All right, so let's just start with the store. The other thing I'd like to do just as a little refresher, this is based off of the store that I created in this demo, which is an Ionic Vue split screen Vuex starter. Please download the code, check it out, share your thoughts, definitely leave some comments below on it. But let's get back to this video. So let's start with the store. So the way you create a store is with create store. Then you define the state that you want to use. And so in this state, I only need to know two things. I need to know if I have a user. I need to know if I've initialized the app or not. I've created this type up here for my state just to give me a little bit of IntelliSense / type ahead help, but also to kind of throw exceptions if some of these values don't match when I'm passing parameters. So just as a refresher on Vuex, in Vuex you have your state, you have your actions, which are always asynchronous, and then underneath your actions you have your mutations, which actually update the state. I don't have any getters in here, but usually you can have some getters on the bottom also, which are a way to kind of get data out of state that you might want to do some transformation on before you actually present it to the front end. Since this is such a simple store, all we have is a user, and if they're logged in, I don't really need to use getters, so there's no getters here. But if you have any questions, please post them below and I can kind of point you in the right direction. So the actions that we have here is to initialize the store. And on the store initialization, which I'll show you how we call this at the startup of the app, this thing returns a promise. Because what we basically want is we don't want the app to do anything until I've asked Firebase, hey, has there been a user and have you loaded the user? So what we do in initialize store is we initialize Firebase. We run this Firebase to check if the auth state changed. And then if auth state changed, then we get the current user, because honestly, auth state change just returns a user credential, which is actually different than a Firebase user. So that's why the next thing I do here is I call Firebase to get the current user. And then I call this, using the context I call commit. My commit calls this mutation initialize, and I pass it the flag of whether I'm initialized, and then I pass it to user. So let's go down and see what we do here in the commit. So on the commit, as you can see here, I'm using some type, and so the type that needs to get passed in, I need to get a user, and I need this initialized state of true or false, and then I set the state here to whether it's initialized or not, and then I set my current user. The next thing that this guy does is it does a login. And as you can see, I use the context. It's expecting the payload that it gets passed to have an email and a password. I've defined the type here. The email's of type string, the password's of type string. Then we call the Firebase login. Pretty straightforward. And then same thing after we log in, we get the current user, and then we call set authenticated user. Set authenticated user just sets the user. That's really all it does. And it's going to either set it to null or it's going to set it to the current Firebase user, and then it sets the state. So this way I get access to it later. And then the last one is logout, which calls the Firebase sign out, and then it calls set authenticated user and sets the user to null. So this is basically what our store does. It keeps track of whether or not you've been initialized, and it keeps track of the current user. The important thing here is it's kind of initializing store at startup, and I'll show you how we do that. So let's kind of transition over to that. So in the past, I was trying to do this hokey stuff where I was trying to kind of set up Firebase or set up the store here, but I've figured it's better to do it in the app component, because the app's only getting mounted once, and so in the on-mount of the app, I'll handle it. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. When you're working with the store, you import the store here in your main.ts, and you just indicate on the create app that you're going to use the store. And so this gets the store kind of injected into the application. And then the next thing we want to do is when the app first starts up, this is where we want to initialize the store. So what we do is I'm using the onMounted lifecycle event for my component. And then I'm also using this composable that we get from a Vuex that gives me access to the store. So in my setup method, you see this is a little bit different. We're using the setup method on the component. I get my store, and then in the onMount, when this component is mounted, I dispatch the initialize store. And as I said before, the initialize store method, it comes in here and it does its Firebase magic and determines if I have a user or not. And why is that important? Because now that this is mounted, and then we are going to hit our first route, and I skipped over my route, so let me hop over so I can show you guys the routes. If we hop over to our route, we see we only have one route, which is our home. So let's hop into home. So where are we? So we go into our home view, and we can see, once again, we're using the setup. In the setup, we have some variables or properties that we're using with this component. We're using the ref for the credentials, which will make the credentials reactive. The credentials are email and password. You see I have a type set up on this, and then what we have is up here in our view. When you're logging in, we've bound the credentials email and the credentials password here. That's how we get the data from the form into our setup. Also, to provide access to credentials in the template, you can see down here at the bottom, I need to return it. In fact, these are all the things that the template needs access to. So they're all being returned at the end of setup. The login function, the logout function, the credentials, as you can see for input output, and then these state variables, whether or not I've checked the authentication and if I actually got a user back. I need access to all these in a template, so they need to be returned from the setup. So that's what's going on there. So we said here's the variables or properties that we need for my component. We already spoke about uStore, so I'm using uStore again to get access to the store. Here's my computed functions to get state values back. So I need, once again, whether or not the user was initialized, and if I have a user, I'm kind of casting this object using my state type that I documented inside of my store. It's not really that important here because it's pretty, I only have 2 properties that I need to get access to, but it's just a practice that you might want to do to ensure that you're getting the right values back off of the object and to kind of have some type safety. So these 2 computed functions or properties will give me access to whether or not I actually have checked for authentication, and then if I actually have a user, it will give me the user object back when the user object changes. And then down here we have our do login function. In our login function, we dispatch the login event, we pass it the credentials that it has, and we execute the login. Since the login is a promise, we wait till it's complete. We just return null, and then we let the application do what it needs to do. If login is successful, this state value here will change. So I will actually have a user object. And then if we look at what I'm doing in the template, let's go back up to the template. When it first starts up and I'm checking for if I have an authenticated user, I just do nothing but write initializing across the top of the screen. Else, if I actually have a user, i.e. the user does not equal null, then I display the user object that I got back from my computed property here. So using my user from the computed property. And I render that here, and this here is the, this is when I'm in the auth checked and I have a user state, i.e. the user is not equal null. And then otherwise, I don't have a user, authentication has been checked, and then this is where I kind of render the login information, so that's what you see here. And that is the magic of Vuex. Let me just format. That is the magic of Vuex and kind of a basic login flow that you can get going with Firebase here and manage it with Vuex. So these computed, as I stated, could be replaced with getters. Here's our functions dispatching the login, and the logout kind of is the same as the login. I dispatch this event. It calls the action calls the commit, it updates the user information. If the user information gets set to null, then we go back up to the template here, and we've already checked for auth, so it's not this state. User does equal null, so it's not this state. So then we drop back down here, and then it displays the login. And this is what we got, and this is how we manage it using the setup. I think we have enough time here to just quickly, let me keep track of my time. I think we have enough time, this won't get too long, kind of go over the approach where we're not using TypeScript and we're not using the setup approach. It's very similar. If you look here, you'll see that one difference here is that we just import the store. So this gives us access to the store object. Inside of our data section of our component, we define the credentials that we're going to need in the template, which is the email and the password. We're still using computeds here, so it's just a different way it's structured, but it's still computed to get the, and we're using the store, so it's this store.state. Actually, I'm looking at what I did, and because I'm using the $$ store, I don't really need to import store here. So like down here, I could probably also do this dot. See, because I get my store. So I could do this dot $sign store to get access to my store. And then call the dispatch. But this is the same as before. I'm getting the credentials that were the email and the password. I'm dispatching my login, dispatching my logout. The difference here is these methods are inside of this method section. There's no setup. I don't need to do the return. They're automatically accessible to the template. To make this work inside of the no TypeScript version, I did not have to change the template at all. It was just a matter of changing the way it's set up here. One thing to note, because people trip on it often, is that if you notice here when I'm decomposing the credentials, that because this is a reference I'm working with, I have to actually go down to value to get it. If you just try to decompose just credentials, it'll throw an error. You have to say credentials and get the value. And that's how you get what you need. So like I said, this just what it was supposed to be a quick overview of utilizing Vuex inside of Vue 3, showing you both ways it could be done with TypeScript, without TypeScript, and also with the setup or the composition API approach versus the options approach. Hopefully you found this helpful. You have any more comments, please leave a comment below. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Also, please definitely check out my Vue book and my Vue courses. And I appreciate those of you who are watching this. You take care. Bye now.